welcome to today's video. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Estee, and on my channel we discuss everything in the beauty world and sometimes some other things. So if that interests you, be sure to subscribe because it really means everything to a small creator like myself. And if you are enjoying this video as you're watching it, you already know what to do. Please give this a big thumbs up. For today's video, we are doing another Splurge or Save. These are my ultimate favorite to film. Basically, if you have not seen my prior Splurge or Save videos, what I do is put two products head to head, and by the end of the day, I tell you whether you should splurge your money on the more expensive item or save your coin and get the less expensive item. And for today's battle, if you will, we are putting the Fenty Beauty Eaze Drop Blurring Skin Tint head to head with the Wet n Wild Tinted Hydrator. Basically, the reason I wanted to put these two head to head, for obvious reasons, it's because they're both sort of like these tinted moisturizer type of products, skin tint type of products, if you will, but the Wet n Wild has become a holy grail favorite of mine these last few months. I believe I tried this out for the first time at the end of 2020 or right in the beginning of 2021, and this has become a holy grail. I literally wear it almost every single day, and it is $5. Now, when the Fenty came out, I think it was released maybe a week to a week and a half ago, I was like, I'm not really interested in that because I have acne, I have a ton of acne scarring, I have perioral dermatitis, all these things that I need to cover up. So usually I like more full coverage foundations, or at least medium coverage foundations. But I was seeing amazing videos about this, amazing reviews. And I was like, you know what? I have a tinted moisturizer, skin tint type of product that I love. So maybe I'll like this one just as much. So I decided to pick this up, and I was like, you know what? Let me just put these two to the test and see which one is better, which one I like more, and if you should splurge on the Fenty Beauty one or save some money and try something out that's more affordable like the Wet n Wild. I'll be doing a demo application, of course, and an 8-hour wear test, and I will have everything timestamped below. Before I get into that, I do want to tell you all a little bit about both of these complexion products, pricing, shade range, all of that. So if you're not interested in that and you just want to see the demo and my final thoughts, everything will be timestamped down below. First off, let's talk about the price difference. So the Fenty is $29.50 and the Wet n Wild is $5.99. As far as the shade range goes, as you can probably already guess, the Fenty is definitely supreme when it comes to the shade range, as they usually are with all of their products. This comes in 25 shades, whereas the Wet n Wild only comes in 12 shades. As far as the claims for both, I'm just reading this right off my phone. The Fenty says a lightweight buildable light to medium coverage skin tint that leaves skin looking blurred and smooth, and it says it has a natural finish, whereas the Wet n Wild says that it is a sheer to medium coverage with a semi-matte finish for a naturally flawless and nourished glow. I'm going to show you the two shades I'll be comparing, which they're not exact, but you'll see that in a minute. But I do want to call out the super cool packaging. I mean, Fenty always kills it with their packaging, but I just love how sleek it is. It has this little applicator, if you will, and it squeezes out super easily, and this shape is just so cool. Obviously, Wet n Wild is like very standard, just a tube, but let me squeeze these both out so you can see the shades I'm working with. So here are those two shades. I know that I squeezed out a lot on the back of my hand, but I also sort of wanted to show the consistency. So this one right here is the Wet n Wild in the shade medium tan, and this one right here, which is dripping on my finger, is the Fenty in the shade 5. So as you can see from the consistency, they're kind of similar. The Fenty is definitely a little bit more liquidy, but I would say that they're both like a normal liquid foundation sort of consistency. They're not super runny, and they're not like creams either. And that is the main information about these two products. So without further ado, let's get right into the demo footage. I'm gonna go ahead and get started on the demo. On this side of my face, I will be using the Fenty, and on this side of my face, I will be using the Wet n Wild. I'm going to apply both sides as I usually apply the Wet n Wild or any type of skin tint or tinted moisturizer. And basically what I do is just go in and rub it in with my fingers and then blend it out with a sponge. I'll be using the same sponge on both sides. They're just totally a different color because this one is brand new and this one has been through the ringer. I am going to go ahead and get started with the Fenty side. I'm going to try to do my best to use like the same amount of product on both sides of my face. I think I'm just going to use as much product as I need to sort of just, you know, cover my whole face. I also quickly want to mention that I don't have anything on my skin besides skincare. I'm not wearing any primer just because when I try out a new complexion product, I like to just try it out. No primer, usually no setting spray, just to see how it is and how it performs on its own. I'm just going to dip my sponge into the excess on my hand and start blending this out. Oh wow, it already looks beautiful. It really gives like a beautiful finish to the skin. I feel like it just makes your skin look really nice and healthy. And I mean, so far I am impressed with this coverage. I mean, damn. All right, so I'm getting definitely more coverage than I expected, and it's definitely less dewy than I had expected, but let's go ahead and do the Wet n Wild side and then I will zoom you all in. So I'm just applying the Wet n Wild just with my middle finger since I applied the other one with my pointer. Now the color is pretty much the same, but the undertones of these two are slightly different. So hopefully, you know, I don't look like crazy by the end of this, but I think it'll be all right. This is also the reason why I never do my eyebrows first, because I don't know, I can't help myself. I always get foundation on my eyebrows, always without fail. So here is a close-up of the Fenty side. It's looking really good in my non-problem areas. So over here where I'm having some acne and my perioral dermatitis, I don't know if the camera is picking this up, but it's sort of accentuating my dryness and kind of just clinging over here, if you can see that. And then if we move over to the Wet n Wild side, it's definitely not clinging to some of the dryness that I have on my chin, and it's looking really nice. I obviously love this product already, but just to give you all sort of a comparison as far as the coverage and the finish. I actually think that the Fenty finish is a little bit more natural and the Wet n Wild is actually giving me slightly more of a glow, which I'm surprised about because I just had assumed that the Fenty would be like very glowy because I don't know, skin tints when they sort of hit the market, they tend to be very glowy. But yeah, I think overall both sides are looking really good and I'm actually really surprised with the coverage on the Fenty side. I do want to go ahead and put on a second layer on both. Now I know that both are skin tints and just supposed to be a tint to your skin, but for all of you out there that want to try a skin tint and maybe you have acne or you have rosacea or you have scarring or basically all of it put together in one like myself, I just want to show you how it does look built up. And if you can build it up, even if you just want to build it up in one certain spot that's your problem area. I'm just taking a little bit more of the Fenty and squeezing out onto my hand. I also love the packaging of the Fenty, the squeeze out tube, 10 out of 10. And I'm not gonna put a second layer all over because I don't really need to. I kind of just want to apply it in my problem area. So over here on my cheek, I have a lot of acne scars. And then on my chin, I have some breakouts, some perioral dermatitis, you know, all that fun stuff. All right, let's blend this out. I want to be, you know, kind of gentle as I blend this out just to make sure, you know, I don't pick up too much product with my sponge, or rather my sponge doesn't soak up too much product, if that makes sense. Oh wow, this is definitely building up. Let's see how it looks on my chin. Fingers crossed. I also find that sometimes when I add, I don't know if this is weird, but sometimes my foundation is looking cakey on my problem areas. When I add more foundation, sometimes it looks even better. Like you would think it would look more cakey, but I don't know. Sometimes the more foundation, the better it looks. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side of my face with the Wet n Wild. Just going to blend this out very quickly and then I will zoom you all in once again. Okay, here we are up close and personal. So I don't really know what's happening with the Fenty side, just over here where it's my problem area and just anywhere I have dryness, it's totally accentuating. I hope the camera is picking up on it. But right here, it's just really looking it's looking like a mess. I definitely got that coverage that I needed. I definitely think it built up to a full medium coverage, but for some reason, it's just totally accentuating my dryness. And then when you look over to the Wet n Wild, it's really not doing that. And the Wet n Wild is just, it looks a lot more hydrating on the skin. But I don't know, that being said, I feel like my areas that are not problem areas with the Fenty, like my forehead and over here and my nose, just they look absolutely beautiful. It's sort of set down on its own, not completely, like it's not completely dry, but it's set down pretty nicely and like it's just looking so beautiful and natural on the skin. But where I'm having my sort of problem area and some more dryness, it's just totally accentuating it. It's making it look very cakey. And I don't know, whereas on the Fenty side, it's, you know, it's not really looking cakey on my problem area and it's just looking really nice and hydrated. So with this second layer on, I definitely say that coverage wise, I would say you definitely get more coverage out of the Fenty, because even on the Wet n Wild side, like I have this sort of pimple coming through a little bit, and on my chin you can see like my redness coming through just a tad bit, whereas I feel like when I built it up on the Fenty side, it gave me like a solid medium coverage, and I don't know, it just gave me like way more coverage than I had expected or that I was anticipating, because it is a skin tint. So I'm really floored on the coverage. So I definitely think that the coverage on the Fenty is better, and it definitely built up on itself better, but I don't know what's happening on my chin. It's just so cakey over here, just where my dry spots are. I mean, my forehead's looking good, everywhere else is looking good. So I don't know, that's the only issue I'm really having with it. The finish is really beautiful. It's not too dewy. The Wet n Wild is definitely more dewy, and this one you do need to like set down. Whereas I feel like the Fenty, I don't really think I'm going to need to use really a powder with this even. It's kind of 95% set down on its own, whereas with the Wet n Wild you can definitely feel that it's a little bit more wet, and that's just kind of how it is. Usually when I use the Wet n Wild, I will go over it with like a really small amount of powder just to like totally set it down. And obviously the Fenty, the shade is better for me, and the shade range in general is better. But I don't know, we will obviously have to see how both wear throughout the day, how both look throughout the day, and see what, you know, what happens with my chin throughout the day with the Fenty. Hopefully it doesn't get worse. Maybe it'll get better. Some foundations or some complexion products are like that. The more you wear it, the better it looks. And obviously, you know, most of them are usually the opposite, but I am hopeful. We will be doing a full 8-hour wear test on both. I'll let you know how my oily areas are doing, obviously how the dry areas are doing, and all of that fun stuff. But before we go into that, I am going to finish up the rest of my makeup, and then I will come back. I'll let you know the other stuff I used on my face and how the other products applied on both sides of my face. All right, I'm back. Here's the finished look. I just did something super quick and simple, nothing too crazy, but let me tell you what I used on my cheeks and on my eyes. I used the Danessa Myricks Color Fix in the shade Creme Brulee. I absolutely love this. So I just did it on my eyes really quick and just put like a contour powder in my crease really quickly, and then I'm wearing this on my cheeks. Also on my cheeks as my highlight, I'm using the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Beauty Light Wand. It has been a minute since I've used this, and this is one of my favorites. To cream contour, y'all already know, I use the Huda Beauty Tantour in the shade Light. What else did I use? Oh, on my lashes, this I have been obsessing over. I have been loving it. It is actually the first tubing mascara I've ever used, and it's so freaking cool. So I have this on my lashes. Absolutely love it. A tip though, if you do use this, is definitely curl your lashes before. And then on my lips, I mix the NYX Sweet Cheeks blush with the Jason Wu Honey Fluff lip cream in the shade Woo Me. So that's what I'm wearing on my lips. And yeah, I feel like this is kind of like a monochromatic look. I didn't mean to make it, but I guess like the eyes and the cheeks being the same, it kind of ended up that way. Overall, the makeup applied on both sides equally easily. I didn't have any trouble with the Fenty side at all. I didn't have any trouble when I was using like my cream bronzer or my cream blush with the foundation like picking up or anything like that. And what's interesting is that obviously when I do my makeup over here, I have these lights and my lights on my wall. And obviously if I'm doing it in front of the camera, I have this big light that's shining on me. But as I was doing makeup, I got up and I looked looked in my other mirror, which is over here. You can't see it in the frame, but it's just like a regular long mirror that I use to like get dressed. And I had all of the lights off, and when I was looking at my face just with like normal lighting, like not under all of these crazy lights, my chin and my problem area on the Fenty side literally looked fine. It didn't look dry or anything like that. Like it didn't look dry, it didn't look cakey, it did not look accentuated, nothing like that. But obviously once I turned on all of these lights, that's when you can kind of see it more. So I kind of did want to mention that. I did not end up setting either side of my face. I do stand by what I said before, that the Fenty side, you really don't need to set. It literally set down totally on its own. It's not getting into my forehead lines. I do think that I can see a little bit of that blurring feature that it claims with my pores, because I do feel like my pores are a little bit, I don't want to say it's like a major difference, but I do feel like they are a little bit more blurred out on this side of my face versus the Wet n Wild side on my face. So yeah, it's looking pretty good so far. Like I said before, I did not use a primer. I did not set either sides with a powder. I did not use a setting spray. So we're really going to test this out and see how it is on its own and see how my oils will be doing, hopefully within the next 4 hours and 8 hours. I won't be looking like crazy oily or crazy shiny or anything like that. But yeah, it's looking good so far. And with that being said, I will see you for the first check-in in another 4 hours. All right, I am back. It has been 4 hours of wearing both of these skin tints. Let me go in and tell you about the Fenty side. So my forehead's looking good. It's not accentuating any of my wrinkles or anything like that. As far as my nose is looking a little shiny. Won't lie, it's looking a little shiny. And then as far as like over here, I want to say that on the Fenty side, my oils are coming through like slightly more, like ever so slightly, like hardly a difference. So it's looking really good. One thing that I want to point out, which I said when I was done doing my makeup previously, like earlier in the day, earlier in this video, is that maybe this area would look better as I wear it, and it definitely does. Like, it's definitely looking less dry, it's looking less cakey, it's still being accentuated, but not nearly as much. Let me zoom you all in. Okay, so here is my chin. It's still looking a little dry, it's still accentuated for sure, but like not nearly as much as it was before. So here is a close-up. I definitely think the camera is making me look, you know, a little bit more shiny because I have this big light going on. But overall, sorry, as I'm like trying to, there we go. But overall, I think both sides are looking really, really good. I think overall the Fenty is looking really good. I'm still like, even after wearing this for 4 hours, I'm still really shocked at the coverage that I got from the Fenty. So it's looking good so far. If I had to pick right now whether you should save or splurge, I would probably say save, but we shall see. I will see you in another 4 hours. All right, I am back. It has been 8 hours of me wearing both of these skin tints, tinted moisturizers, foundations, whatever you want to call it. I feel like every time I do one of these videos, like a foundation fight or anything like that, at the 8 hour mark, I don't know, it's like I look like extra crazy. But anyways, let's talk about both of these skin tints, tinted moisturizers. I don't even know what to call them at this point. Let's talk about them. So let me get my handy dandy mirror and see what I think. So I do think that throughout the day, I mentioned this in the 4 hour check-in, but I do think that throughout the day, the Fenty side did look better and kind of warmed up to my skin, if you will. And I'm really, really impressed by it. I'm really impressed with the finish. I'm really impressed with the coverage. I did not set it with a powder. I did not use a setting spray. I did not use a primer. And it still wore beautifully throughout the day. It didn't fade or anything like that. That being said, I didn't do much today. I did not wear a mask. I didn't really leave the house. I did walk my dog, but you know, that was about it. I did, you know, eat some dinner and stuff like that, but like I wasn't wearing a mask, I wasn't running errands, so I can't really say about, you know, the transfer proof. So I can't really say how it like transfers or anything like that. But overall, I am really impressed with the Fenty side. Let me zoom you all in so you can all see. So here you are up close and personal You can see my forehead. It didn't get into any of my lines over there. And I do think it blurred a little bit of my pores, not super blurring, but I see somewhat of a difference. And then here is my chin. So I do think that this area is definitely looking less cakey than it was prior. And I do think that the skin tint did warm up to my skin. And then here is the other side with the Wet n Wild. As far as my oils coming through, I do think, like I said in the 4-hour check-in, I do think that the Fenty side, my oils are coming in just a tad bit more. It's nothing that's like so extreme that you can really notice unless you were like really looking, but I would say a tad bit more on the Fenty side. And ultimately, do I think you should save or you should splurge? This is really difficult. I feel like it always is difficult, but I'm gonna say you should save. And the main reason I say that is because of the clinging and the cakiness that the Fenty side kind of was experiencing. Like I did mention multiple times, it did sort of warm up and look better throughout the day, but I feel like for the price, for $5.99 for $6, the Wet n Wild just, it lasts all day. I have less oils coming through. It does not cling to any of my dryness or anything like that. I feel like the main difference between the two is that the Wet n Wild you probably could set because it doesn't like set down as much on its own, whereas I do feel like the Fenty really set down on its own. You really don't need to set it with a powder if you don't want. Also, the Fenty also has an incredible shade range. It has multiple undertones. The shade range is just, it cannot be beat. So although you may want to try the Wet n Wild, there may be somewhat of a high chance that there may not even be like a shade that works for you, if that makes sense. But ultimately, I have to say save. Even though the Fenty did give a little bit more coverage, I feel like at that point, if you're looking for more coverage, you're probably just better off getting like a medium to full coverage foundation rather than wearing a skin tint. That being said, it really did build on itself beautifully. And overall, I'm really impressed by the Fenty. I did not expect to like the Fenty at all, I have to be honest, mostly because the people that I saw trying it out on YouTube and on TikTok, some of them did have some like hyperpigmentation and stuff like that, but they did not have, you know, active acne like I do. They did not have a lot of scarring or a lot of hyperpigmentation or a lot of anything, if that makes sense. I feel like everyone that I saw using it kind of had really great skin to begin with. And not to say that if you have acne or hyperpigmentation or anything like that, like myself, that does not mean you have bad skin, but I just kind of mean that their skin was less problematic, if you will. And I really didn't see many people with problematic skin using it. So because of that, I didn't really have high hopes for it, but I'm really, really happy that I tested it out for myself and for all of you today. And I really think that this still is an amazing foundation and amazing option. And I still highly, highly, highly recommend this. I think that I would recommend this basically to any skin type. If you are on the more oily side, you can definitely set this with a powder and you'll be fine. If you're on the dry side, I definitely say go in with a really good hydrating primer, especially on areas if you have like any dry patches or anything like that. Go in with a hydrating primer and you should be good. And as you saw, I wore this for 8 hours. It did not break up at all and it still looks absolutely beautiful on the skin. All right, and with that being said, that is all for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up and I will see you in my next one. Bye.